Hi guys, this is a video response to a question posed by Graeme in Australia. Graeme is in the market for a new saw, and he has kind of a special request because he wants to cut thick wood, which is about 1.5 or 40 millimeters, which can be challenging. What makes it more challenging is when you want to cut that thick wood at a 45-degree angle. Life gets a little bit more complicated then. So let's see if the Excalibur, which was a specific question of his, let's see what happens when you try to cut a 1.5 inch thick piece of 2x4, which we happen to have here, which is also 37 millimeters, as you can see. Let's see what happens when you try to cut that on a Excalibur Scroll Saw with a tilting head. Okay, let's get it to 45 degrees, tighten it down, and as you can see, we have a problem. That knob, not going to work real well on cutting 45 degrees into a thick piece of wood because the knob is going to hit on it and it's not going to work, so I'm not even going to attempt it. But you may say, well, the knob's not on the other side, so let's flip it over and see if that makes any difference. Okay, turn baby turn. Whoops, I bumped the camera. Okay, let's see where our mark is. Okay, that's pretty close to 45. Okay, the blower we can deal with. It's not too big of an issue. Look at that. Wow. It's amazing. It won't even get that low. And we are on the lowest part. Don't let that trick you if your saw happens to be on the upstroke. The saw does have, oh, there's another issue. All the way over at 45, the blade is hitting on the table. Cutting 45 degrees at all on this saw probably isn't a good idea. It doesn't really matter how thick your wood is. It's not something most scrollers are going to do. I mean, I've had this saw for 2 years now, and I've never had to attempt anything like that. You know, but it is something to be aware of. If you've got projects that you want to cut at 45 degrees all the time, you probably want to rethink what saw you're going to buy, because this one is probably not the most practical saw for you because it simply isn't going to work very well, especially on thicker wood. Now with that said, let's see what happens on a saw that the head doesn't tilt. Okay, here's a golden oldie. This is my very first scroll saw. I actually got it off of Craigslist for $10. I used it for 2 years, made a lot of the projects that you've seen on YouTube that I've made and on my websites. It might be ugly, it might not be extremely practical to use, but it's a saw that actually works pretty darn well. So I can't complain too much. As you can see, the table's flat. With the table now set at 45 degrees, we can stick our 2x4 up here, which again is, well, let me flip it over. Basically 1.5 inches thick, or 37 to 38 millimeters. It just barely fit underneath the blade holder there, which is going to make it a little difficult to cut. Let's see what happens here. Wow, I haven't turned this thing on in a long time. Yeah, you know what, we can do it. But I wouldn't necessarily call that practical. So I'm going to call this myth busted. One thing I have learned, I've never tried cutting 45-degree angle on a scroll saw before, and I guess there's a reason for that. It's simply just not practical. Sorry, Graeme, but you might want to look for another way to cut a 45-degree angle into your thick wood. Even if would go, you're cutting 37, 40 millimeter thick wood with a little teeny tiny blade. It's probably just not a great idea. Either need to redo your project or try a bandsaw. You might be able to get it done with a bandsaw. Alright, well that concludes this episode of 45 degree scroll saw cutting. And don't forget to check out my websites. my YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. I'm on it all. You know, you won't have a hard time finding me or getting hold of me. As always, happy scrolling, everybody.